welcome to Meet the Candidates Night for the upcoming Board of Education elections. My name is Ken Driscoll. I will be your moderator this evening. At this time, I'd ask everyone to please silence any electronic devices that you may have so we don't have any interruptions. I'd also like to remind everyone this is a district event. Masks are required throughout the evening. We are excited to have our 5 candidates for the 2 open Board of Education positions with us this evening. In addition to our candidates, we are fortunate to have 6 outstanding current members of our student body with a shared interest in civics and who now can see democracy in action firsthand. We will begin the night with each candidate providing an introduction of themselves. Once candidates' introductions are complete, we will move into a question and answer format for the bulk of the evening. Leading up to this event, the community was asked to submit questions, and the community responded with over 100 questions for our candidates this evening. These questions were reviewed by PTA members who narrowed them down to 9 questions representative of the overarching topics raised. Some questions may have been combined or paraphrased, but the 9 questions selected represent the main topics concerning our community. Each of our students will take turns introducing themselves at the podium on the far right and asking one of the questions. Each candidate will be given the opportunity to respond to the question. Responses should provide insight into the candidate's perspective and opinion on the topics presented. Remember, this is not a debate. Please answer the question rather than responding to statements made by other candidates. We want to hear your thoughts on these important topics. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to the question. Our timekeeper in the middle will hold up a yellow piece of paper with 15 seconds left in the allotted time to provide an opportunity for candidates to complete their thoughts on the topic before their time expires. Candidates, please be aware of this indication, as once the 90 seconds elapse, she'll hold up a red sign, which will indicate to me to cut you off. We do want to keep this on time and on schedule to get through all of the questions that were fielded from the community. We'll begin with Mr. Brown receiving the first question, and then we'll rotate through so each candidate has the opportunity to respond first and last as we go through the evening. After all the questions are asked, we will again provide each candidate a final 90 seconds to appeal for the vote before we conclude the evening. Does anyone from the panel have questions on the order of events and the guidelines for the evening? If not, then let us begin with introductions of our candidates. Mr. Brown, would you go first, please?
All right, good evening. My name is Nathaniel Brown. I'm born and raised here and a father of 4. In the last year, I've seen things that concern me greatly as a parent. I watched my children struggle and cry on a nearly daily basis because their life was turned upside down with progress moving too slow. We're even still waiting for half of Fairport students to return to school full time. Something else also happened. New curriculums rooted in critical race theory were introduced. What is critical race theory? I'm glad you asked. Educators call it a lens. Others call it a standard, but it is really an extension of the Marxist school of critical theory. Its sole purpose is to link racism, race, and power. And unlike the civil rights movement, which worked within the rules of our republic, it challenges the very foundation of liberal order, such as rationalism, neutral constitutional law, and legal reasoning. Author Ibram Kendi says that to be an anti-racist, you must also be anti-capitalist. And we must make inequity unconstitutional so that the government can forcibly step in to balance resources. If that sounds like something you've heard before, I'll say it again. It's Marxism. Kendi's books and ideas are currently part of Fairport's new Pathstone curriculum. Critical race theory has led to implementations of culturally responsive teaching and equity policies. This includes a New York school calling for an end to advanced courses because there are quote unquote too many Asians, or as they call it, a lack of equity in education. It also teaches that the police system must be dismantled or abolished. Responding to complaints, our own school had to remove something happened from our town. Such curriculums paint our police and law enforcement in horrible ways, and it is completely unfair. Our education system must return to teaching excellence and help every last student, regardless of background, to succeed and do their best. I fear that Fairport and its leaders have lost their way, and while I'm sure their intentions are pure, we're going down a road of further division. Sorry, I went too long.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Forsgren, will you respond? Great. Introduce yourself.
Thank you. Good evening. Peter Forsgren, current board member for not finishing up my 9th year and running for re-election. In those 9 years, I have ceased to be amazed. I haven't ceased to be amazed. What's the right word? By the students. They teach us how to endure. They teach us how to adapt. They teach us how to succeed. And as an educational institution, that is fantastic. That's what we're looking for. It's what I love to see when we walk around the schools. It is awesome. And so I don't fear education. It's ennobling, it's empowering. It opens up new horizons. It gives us vision. It gives us opportunities. And so I say, learn it. Learn the beautiful, learn the good, learn the bad, learn the ugly. Bring that all together. Process it, understand it, and we go out into the world and we can make it a better place. That is the beauty of education. So I've been asked, what would I change if I were to be reelected? And the question really comes down to, in my mind, is what has been done to set us on a path of continual improvement. And we did that several years ago when we gathered the community together and thousands of people answered surveys and hundreds of people participated. And we went into and defined finally a long-term plan for us. And that is a long-term plan of continual improvement, understanding where we've been, who we are, and where we want to go. We understand we're a really good district. All the data signifies that. Time to dedicate ourselves to continuing on that path. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Forsgren. Mr. Cords, if you'd like to go next.
And happy Mother's Day. You made all of this possible. I've lived in the area all my life. And I have lived here in Barrington with my family and my son for 30 years. My son went to school here A to Z. He did have a IEP. And quite frankly, Fairport schools are some of the best in the state and perhaps in the country. I want to keep it that way. Over the past year, I too have been concerned about not only our country, but what's happening here in the local level. I'm concerned about what I see happening, what I read, what I see online. And it caused me to pause and in my retirement now to put myself at your service for school board. I want to serve the entire community with no special interests. I've talked to a lot of folks in town. People have come to me and approached, and they say, we'd love you to run. This election's not about me or any one of us. It's really about what's being taught in our schools. And I think some of the materials, quite frankly, represent indoctrination.
Thank you, Mr. Cords.
Thank you.
Mrs. Shaw.
Thank you. My name is Stacy Show. I've had the opportunity to have 3 wonderful stepchildren go through our district, K through 12, and graduate from this great school. I also have a current student who's in 7th grade at Martha Brown. The reason that I decided to run for school board was I looked at the current school board and their members and saw not a lot of parent representation. And during this difficult time in the last year or so, the parents have been affected greatly in this community, not having their kids in school and with other stresses. What I would like to do is my main focus is number one, these kids need to be back to school in the fall full time, if not sooner. And I do not take this appointment lightly. I take this responsibility of recognizing and putting the safety of the education of your children in my hands. And I feel like it is an honor to be selected and hopefully elected onto this board. My main goal as being a board member, if I do get elected, is all about making ethical decisions and making them in a lens that accepts everybody in our community and our students, and making respectful conversations part of this community. Every decision and policy should be examined and say what is best for this student. Our community I've seen lately is high in division, and that is completely unacceptable for our students to be thrown into the middle of that. And their main focus should be education and having a safe space to learn.
Thank you, Mrs. Shea. And Mrs. Wood.
Thank you. Good evening. First, I want to thank our PTSA for organizing tonight, as well as our students for giving up their Wednesday night to be here. Thank you for all of you who are here tonight, watching from home, watching on demand later. I appreciate the time you're taking. I'm Dr. Mary Caitlin White, and I'm asking for your vote on May 18th to serve our community on the Board of Education. I'm a former middle school Spanish teacher, and I now work at SUNY Geneseo as an adjunct professor in their School of Education. I work with student teachers as they complete their final placements, serving as their university-based teacher educator. I've taught graduate coursework and undergraduate coursework on a variety of topics in education. I serve on the steering committee on the Regional Equity Network, which serves as a hub for superintendents and administrators in our county to further their understandings and knowledge about equity and inclusion. I also serve on our district's committee for curriculum, as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion. Being knowledgeable about area schools and communities, when my husband and I decided to purchase our forever home, we chose Fairport. We knew this was a community and a district our daughters could grow up in and could flourish in. And Ellie is quite ready to become a Dudley Dragon in September. I've had the privilege to work in many area schools and get to know many school communities through my work at Geneseo, and it was a clear choice for Fairport. It didn't hurt. Some of our best friends now live down the street, so our babies can grow up together. I hope you'll take some time tonight to get to know me. And you can also find out more about myself on my website, marycaitlinwhite.weebly.com, or on my Facebook page. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. White. We will now begin with the question and answer format. So I would ask students to again go up to the podium. On this first initial time around, they will introduce themselves, give you a little bit background about themselves, and then deliver their questions. We will start this first round with Mr. Forsgren. And so can I have Ava please come up to the podium?
Hello, my name is Ava McCune. I am a senior at Fairport High School. I will be attending the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities, to study plant science next year. I'm very excited about that. Thank you. All right, and candidate 2, what do you believe should be the top priorities for the school board and school leadership over the next 5 years? Thank you.
5 years. I have a sister in Rochester, Minnesota. I think you're going to love it. It is beautiful. Priorities, right? Short term and long term. We have that spelled out in our long term plan, but even because of the unforeseen events of COVID, right, and the impacts that the mitigation that needs to take place, I think we double down on our small class sizes, right? That will help in the misnomer of learning loss. There has not been learning loss. It just hasn't been as quickly as it normally would be. So we have that, right? To keep our class sizes smaller, we go to the smaller end of our ranges. We look to the mental health supports. I don't know that there's another district, and I may be wrong on that, but I don't know there's another district who has invested as much in the mental health supports as this district has. And that's going to show its real value here in the next couple of years, right? As again, we try to overcome. And so that is, I hope not up to 5 years, but indeed we'll have those resources available to us. Mayo Clinic, Minnesota, right, just put out in their blog also about the importance of belonging, how all in our society have this belonging and how COVID disrupted that quite a bit. So we look at that in our programs as well. Sports, clubs, getting our clubs in there more, music. And so we continue with all that. Strong professional development, always a high priority. Times are changing, must keep our staff up to speed on all those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Forsgren. Mr. Cordes?
To me, it comes down to just a couple of issues, at least initially. First and foremost, we have to open the schools up. At this point, we have all the tools to do it. There's no excuse not to move forward. Quite frankly, I view still the lagging of opening schools as a method of control. It's our kids, our schools, our school district. We need to be standing up and make this open up. No excuses. Number two, we have to get the politics out of the school district. It's toxic. It's divisive. Do we want to raise a generation of radicals? I don't think so. Hate does not belong in our school system. Look at Dr. King's teachings. Look at Jesus's teachings. Follow those rules. And we'll all be better for it. We don't need to be divided as a community or a nation. That's what I would do first.
Thank you, Mr. Cordes. Mrs. Shaw?
Okay, well, so for future plans, if I was elected, I have 4 main goals that I think are priorities for our district. The first one is making sure that all staff, teachers, and students feel safe, healthy, and secure in their school environment. As a board member, I would ask questions to find out what educators, administrators, parents, and students need to be and feel safe and healthy in their classrooms as we return back to school in the fall. I would then connect with the right directors in our district to make sure that they have everything they need in the classroom to feel supported and safe. The second is supporting the mental health of our students, teachers, and staff members. In addition to helping to make sure right counseling programs are available, I would look to provide more community and school activities to help support the social aspects of our district. The third would be taking a harder and more fiscal responsibly look at the budget to identify where the most important needs are, making sure that is being invested in. And things like Minerva DeLand, for example, needs serious upgrades to their lockers, classrooms, and staff rooms. At Fairport High School, the pool, the athletic rooms, gyms, lockers are absolutely unusable by athletes. And lastly, the fourth thing would be, I would think we need to take a hard look at the shortages that will do and affect our district. The ongoing transportation driver shortage caused by non-competitive pay. There's also and will be a teacher shortage. As a board member, I would make sure that we have policies and metrics in place to have the very best educators in Fairport. That includes working with educators and FEA to develop contracts that are supportive of our educators' needs and make sure is what is detailed in those contracts is being followed for the best
Thank you,
interest of
Mrs.
our
Shaw.
students.
Mrs. White?
So first, I agree with my colleagues up here about the physical and mental well-being for our students and our faculty. This has been a traumatic and continues to be a traumatic event. We also need to work on our equity. We need to view everything we do in our district through this lens, ensuring equitable education opportunities for all students. One of the beautiful things about education is we get new members every year, and our students and our faculty in our community. And so this work is always ongoing to make sure all of our students' needs are being met. We need long-term contracts for our educators. We are facing a huge teacher shortage in schools of education. So we need to be planning now to be able to recruit and retain the best teachers for Fairport. This goes alongside our work in recruiting and retaining a diverse workforce, and we're going to need to be very smart and competitive. We need to focus on sustainability as a district. As we buy new buses, how do we opt for electric options, especially with available grants? How are we going to address the styrofoam ban that's coming into effect? How do we reduce our impact on our planet? And we also need long-term facilities planning. One of our biggest financial assets in the district is our facilities. So how do we ensure that there's routine and long-term maintenance and planning so that we're ensuring our investment is well cared for?
Thank you, Mrs. Shell. Mr. Brown.
All right, I'll save myself a little time and say ditto on a lot of things that were just said. But that said, there's a couple of things that are priority for me. One is fiscal responsibility. Just maintaining a balanced budget for all the taxpayers in here. I know, Fairport does have high taxes. Just making sure that we're meeting all the needs of our district while not raising our taxes. Like Mrs. Shell said, we're dealing with, facilities needing upgrading. But more pragmatically for the students, I think it's absolutely vital that everyone in Fairport gets access to the same high quality education, gets the tools and resources you need to succeed no matter where you are in life. And at a personal level, we talked about the school buses there for a moment. I do think we need to invest a little bit more into those jobs in our community. For me, a personal story, like I said, I was born and raised in Fairport. So from kindergarten to fifth grade, I had a janitor at Jefferson Avenue School every day. Hi, Nathaniel. Hi, Nathaniel. Hi, Nathaniel. It was a highlight of my day. I talked to him every day. I'm sure some of you students here, you have a teacher or, an employee here who you feel that way about. And years later, I worked for the Parenton Parks and Recreation Program as a counselor at Jefferson Avenue, and I'm throwing away my lunch. I went to Taco Bell, probably not the most healthy thing I've ever done. And I went to throw my food away, and I hear, hi, Nathaniel. And it was the same guy. And I think it's so important that we invest in those things because those people have such a positive impact on the people sitting in front of us as they're getting ready to go off to college. And I think that's important.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. And thank you, Ava.
Thank you.
Next up is Nick, and Mr. Cords will answer this question first.
Hello, everybody. My name is Nick Patrick. I am also a senior, and I will be going to Fredonia as a major for psychology and a minor in dance. Can each of you please explain understanding and how you will support the culturally responsive teaching practices in the district?
Before I answer the question, there's a school bus problem, driver shortage, and no one seems to realize it except the school bus drivers. If you can't get the kids to school. So having said that, first of all, I believe in equality, not necessarily equity. I think everybody should have the same opportunities. They should be presented to them through the school district. Folks need to be treated in a kind and loving manner. When my kid went to school, there was a policy of no bullying. But yet, what I see in school now is evidence of bullying. Not by other kids, but by some of the politics that are causing the division in our community. That's not right. I think if we solve the political problems and we move to some of the philosophical things that Dr. King taught and Jesus Christ, love thy neighbor as thyself, we're all going to be for the better of it.
Thank you, Mr. Cords. Mrs. Shaw.
Okay, well, thank you for your question. This is a tough one to answer in under a minute. So I'm going to do the best I can to kind of explain to you where I'm coming from. I have thoroughly read the CRS, which is the Culturally Responsive and Sustaining Framework from the state, and I absolutely love its ideas. The challenge is to make sure that what's being taught in the classroom and the materials provided in this to the students are following this framework that the state has given. So when we talk about culturally responsive, they talk about help educating teachers, helping students learn and having student-centered learning environments that affirm cultural identities, foster positive academic outcomes, develop students' abilities to connect across lines of difference, elevate historical marginalized voices, and empower students as agents of social change. So when I hear things like that, I think we need to provide this framework as a guideline. And as a board member, we need to be heavily involved in what is being put into our classroom. So we need to know that the classroom is a welcoming and affirming environment. We have to have high expectations and rigorous instruction. We need to have inclusive classroom and assessment and ongoing professional training. But having said that, I'm running for board because I have not seen that being carried out in our classrooms and our schools. Our teachers are doing whatever they would like and
Thank you, Mrs.
providing
Shell.
whatever they want in the classrooms.
Thank you.
And that does not follow this framework.
Mrs. White?
All right, so I have a great video on this that kind of explains all the background knowledge on this topic because it is a huge topic that can't really be broken down into a minute. So culturally responsive curriculums are developed to ensure we're meeting our students' needs. Much of this work is already happening in Fairport. I serve on that committee. And we're aligning our work to the culturally responsive sustaining education framework. So two aspects of this framework focus on fostering high expectations and rigorous instruction, as well as identifying inclusive curriculum and assessment. So the work of equity and culturally responsive teaching is not to purchase pre-made curriculums or a set of unit plans and give them to our faculty members. The work of equity and culturally responsive teaching is empowering our faculty and staff to develop deep understandings of inclusion and equity work so that as they create instructional planning to meet our content standards, they're doing so in alignment with the CRSE framework. They are setting high expectations for all of our learners and doing so in a way that ensures equity for all of our learners. We have highly skilled professionals in our classrooms who are already doing much of this work in ensuring our students have windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. So our students are learning about those like them, as well as those with different lived experiences than their own.
Thank you, Mrs. White. Mr. Brown?
First of all, I love that jacket. Just getting that out there. That's amazing. Like a lot of people said, this is a very difficult topic to unpack in such a short period of time. But I want to look at how culturally responsive teaching has been implemented in other areas of the country and why it's a concern. But before I start there, full stop, racism and intolerance has no place anywhere. We can all agree on that. Regardless of your race, religion, or creed, sexual orientation, if you're coming to Fairport, you should be welcome here and you should be able to get the education you deserve. But when you look at, when you're looking at places like Illinois, who have implemented culturally responsive teaching and they call it the standard, it involves a program for teachers and they are given a choice, either do this or risk your license. The word is, I can't remember the phrase, it's an SAT word, which is why I forgot it. Like I said, I'm not as smart as you. But it means to basically root out and destroy your whiteness as a teacher. And so, you know, again, they say this is the standard for culturally responsive teaching. And a lot of people don't know that. I think a lot of our goals for a welcoming and inclusive Fairport are common, but it is dangerous to go along the grounds using terms and philosophies that are bringing up schools in lawsuits and damaging young minds. I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Forsgren?
In terms of explain your understanding, I think an example probably works from a fellow board member found out through, I believe, a grandchild that the literature that was recommended for a class had only male lead characters, right? This is about safety and mental health and everything for our students, that a student can see themselves when they walk through the door of our schools, right? Regardless of what they are, whatever their background is, the diversity, they see themselves in the literature, they see themselves in posters, they see themselves in the staff, that we have made a concerted and conscious and deliberate effort to embrace diversity, because without diversity, education is not complete. We're sending our children out into a world where they are unprepared if we are not embracing that diversity. And then, so equity and equality play huge roles. And again, you're right, 90 seconds is not enough to address that. Then I have a video on it. But if you're a parent, you practice equity every single day, even if you do not recognize it. It is in your home, and because it's such an important topic, and so is equality, and playing those right at the right times is so important. And so we need to have that. How do we support it? We support it with constantly looking at our curriculum, making sure that it is culturally responsive, that students will be able to see themselves in the literature. And in the subjects, when they study math, the diversity of people out there who have impacted that subject. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Forsgren. And thank you, Nick. Next up, we have Sean.
Hi, my name is Sean, and I'm going to be going to Boston University in the fall to study political science with a minor in urban studies. Okay, so many questions from the community address topics such as anti-racism, critical race theory, and our LGBTQ community. The question is, what is your vision for diversity and inclusion in the Fairport District for all staff and students?
And Mrs. Shell, you will be leading us off.
Nothing on here. Let me get to my notes here. So my whole opinion on anti-racism and the learning and what is going on in our schools, we have to start with acknowledging the past and what was wrong with the people and what people did wrong in the past regarding racism. But we need to also educate students on how far we have come. Individuals that have paved the way to stop racism and what you can do as an individual to make sure that that history and past does not repeat itself. Anti-racism is not a black-white issue, but every race or culture has faced racism somehow, and we have to make sure that all students, included of all races and cultures, are being accepted in the classroom. Back in October, I provided Mr. Provenzano with a document of 88 ways to celebrate diversity in our schools. I think we can do a lot of things as a board to make sure that we are not dividing our students. The constant labels that we are putting on our students every day is not appropriate, and it is dividing our students even more. I, as a member of the community, working in the school district, have spoken with many students in the past and in the future, and our students are trying to fit into a school that is 90% white. So why are we going to constantly label them and pick them out to make them feel even more divided when all they want to do is fit in? So
Thank you, Mrs. Shell. Mrs. White.
All right, so inclusion and equity is really, it's the heart of who I am as an educator. So all of my research is focused on students with special education needs in the foreign language classroom and making sure that every kid has equitable education opportunities. So all students need to be provided with opportunities and access to pursue their dreams. So we're lucky. Every kid comes into our district with strengths and areas of growth. They bring their life experiences, they bring their families' experiences, they bring their languages, they bring their races, they bring their nationalities, and they bring their abilities, and we welcome each of them. We ensure they know how glad we are they are part of this school community, and we do the work. We do the work to ensure their educational experience is equitable and it's inclusive. We do the work to make sure that their needs are met and that they're able to pursue their dreams. And this is tough work, and it's unending work, but it's the work of equity, and it's important.
Thank you, Mrs. White. Mr. Brown.
So when it comes to the inclusion thing, just kind of see my remarks earlier. I would just echo those again, that no matter where you're from, what you believe, who you're attracted to, you deserve a fair and honest education. You mentioned critical race theory, and I'm kind of glad you did. A lot of people don't know what that is. I outlined it briefly, but I want to expand upon it just briefly because it's a part of the Pathstone curriculum. There are authors who have contributed to it, say bluntly, in their own journals that they use critical race theory as the tool for their teaching. Pillar number two, like this is foundational teaching to critical race theory. And I quote from Richard Delgado, "White people are incapable of righteous action on race." This theory immediately swabs almost everybody in this room, save for a few, as irredeemably racist, irredeemably so, which is just completely and wholly inappropriate. I agree that we need to make sure that Fairport is welcoming, that Fairport is diverse, that Fairport is inclusive, but for everybody, without having the undertones of telling us that the white kids in here are racist themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Forsgren.
Thank you. As I said, I think education without diversity is not complete. Take some of that from 2 years living in Argentina, and what a wonderful, incredible, eye-opening experience that was. But it does come down equity and equality, right? Whoever shows up at our doorstep, we will educate. Whoever shows up at our doorstep, we want them to feel safe, protected, supported, again, to see themselves when they walk through the door. Whoever shows up, every opportunity is open to them. Now, we don't do that perfectly. We've looked at that, right? We have urban suburban students and we realized, wow, after school activities, before school activities that we offered, they're missing out. We haven't given them every opportunity to participate. And so there's room for us to do better. And we look at that in our long-term plan. Again, that's been referenced, that we are a great district and we can be better tomorrow and in 5 years. And we have to be able to recognize these things. Now, I take some of my learning and my journey and changes from one of our prior board members who's now moved to the Carolinas. And, shocking me to recognize that continuing along the same path that we've always done has not worked out well for our minority students, not worked out well for our minority population. We must do something different and do something better.
Thank you, Mr. Forsgren. Mr. Cordes.
Thank you. Inclusion. Who can argue with that? We all believe in that. That's why we pay our taxes and send our kids to Fairport School. We all expect the district to give a good and equal schooling, treat all equally. Special needs, etc., must be fully supported, and I've seen every evidence of that. My son went through that when he was in the school system here. Eliminate any racial divisiveness. Do you all like living in the current climate we're living in? It's a nightmare. And it's being taught by our tax dollars. Let's eliminate it. CRT, it's got to go. Sorry, it sounds good. It's been purposely wordsmithed to make us believe that things they want us to believe, but it's toxic. There are no oppressors, and there are no oppressed. And as a famous talk show host said once, eliminate the soft bigotry of low expectations.
Thank you, Mr. Cordes. Dr. Sean. Next, we have Leo coming to the podium, and Mrs. White, you will be responding first.
Hello, my name is Leo Allen. Next year, I'll be going to Case Western Reserve University for mechanical engineering. My question to the candidates is, how will you advocate for a safe return to classrooms and easing of mask requirements for kids heading into the fall?
Thanks, Leo. If you ask anybody in education, any of our teachers, where they want their kids to be, it's in our buildings. In our schools, we know our kids are fed. We know they're loved. We know they're challenged and that they're engaged. No one wants our kids out of our buildings, just like no one wanted a pandemic to change all of our lives. But unfortunately, we don't get to pick the cards we're dealt, just how we're playing the hand. It does not look like the numbers are going to get to a point this school year where we can fully open 7-12. That's not a school board decision. That's a state decision. An important aspect of being on the school board is knowing your role. We can be advocates for our community's wishes at the state level, but we're still required to follow state guidelines, lest you risk lawsuits, insurance companies dropping policies, New York State pulling professional licenses. Where we want and we need to focus our energy in our community right now is ensuring our numbers decrease so that we can safely return all students to buildings in the fall. So this means we need to be following our health and safety guidelines, wearing our masks, getting vaccinated. All of these decisions will help our community fully reopen our schools in the fall.
Thank you, Mrs. White. Mr. Brown?
So obviously the goal is to get back to school full-time, eventually burn these in a bin somewhere one day. But the question is, how do we get there? And I think it's important that we start looking elsewhere in the country for some of the things that are going on and how they're going. For example, if you look at Texas, they have been packing that baseball stadium to the brim for the last month, and they're not seeing a spike. And those 50 some thousand people, they're not even wearing these. So we're reaching a point where we're plateauing. And like they said, we're kind of shoehorned by the state. But I'd just like to remind everyone, and I'm sure a lot of you know this, America was founded to be run locally on. I understand that we are in trouble if we defy Cuomo, but if we continue to act like we're at the mercy of his whims, instead of reminding him that the people who run our schools pay taxes and live in Fairport, and we should not be at the whims of a single bureaucrat in in Rochester, or a single governor on the other side of the state who has no clue what is happening in Fairport, no clue what the taxpayers here want from their schools. I understand that is not an easy fight. I understand that would require lawyers and consultants and everything else, but that is what this school needs to push back against current leadership so that they can do what our community wants, which is to get all of our children back in school full time and to get back to some sense of normalcy.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Forsman.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm a numbers guy, I think, in terms of equations, if you will. And I do think the equation of opening schools has been imbalanced, meaning they're not taking into account those in charge of the physical health and the virus, don't necessarily take into account the mental health impacts, the social, emotional impacts that it's had. And so that the equation is imbalanced. Opening a school, that's a no duh. Okay, everybody wants that. There's no doubt about it. They've been really safe, as studies have shown. Washington University coming out recently, that the layered strategies have made our schools one of the safest places in the country, those who have followed it. And that layer includes, masking, social distancing, air filtration, cleaning. All these are solid practices. We see layered type strategies and other things, bumpers on cars and your seat belts and airbags. And so layered strategies are something that's always been applied. To get it back to your mask requirement, to answer that question, is then you look at which ones are the most effective and you leave those in place for as long as possible and remove the ones that aren't. So if mask is the least effective on that list, it is effective, but you start taking that off. But that's what we need to look at. We started actually that discussion even this morning in the finance committee, looking at different ways to use the funds. But those layers are important, And we need to keep people safe. We need to keep the community safe. And I think we can look at the different layers and say, what are the most important? What do we leave in place? And what are we able to remove? And at what point in time we can remove them.
Thank you, Mr. Forsgren. Mr. Courts.
During my career, I have spent 30 years working in communist China. I have seen firsthand not only what communism does, but a lot of these pandemic-like diseases. This disease came from China. It was manufactured and allowed to spread. So that root cause needs to be dealt with, because quite frankly, what happens after this? What happens with the next pandemic? This one is not that serious, quite frankly. But there are a lot of other things that can be much worse. As far as the schools, we need to open them up. Whatever that takes. It's a community decision. It's a decision made by the board. I think we have to look at the science and the current statistics. We know a lot more now than we did a year ago. So we need to take that into consideration. China measures everybody with a thermal scan right in the forehead. And that is probably something we should institute that will eliminate much of the problem.
Thank you, Mr. Courts. Mrs. Shaw.
Thank you. I appreciate the question. So one of the reasons I decided to run for school board is because I have been advocating since the beginning of September to get these kids back into school full time. Currently, we have a whole board full of members that do not understand what it's like to go home and deal with our children on a daily basis without them being in school. They don't have kids in their homes. They're going home, they're making dinner, and they don't have to deal with the crying and the screaming of being at home, having to wear a mask at school. I will tell you right now, if I make the board, I will not support mandatory vaccines for this district. It is everybody's choice. There are people who have special restrictions. That is a parent's choice, and it is not allowed, and it should not be allowed in our schools for them to get into school. What about the children's suicide rates? What about the parents' mental health? Teachers are scared to come back. And so if anybody's sitting here telling you they're not, I have spoken with many teachers in the district that are scared to come back to school. And if teachers are so scared to not come back to school, then maybe you should find another profession. We need our kids educated. And we need to let you know that if us and you are going out to Wegmans, you're getting your hair done, you're going to restaurants, we have police officers, EMTs. You are not a first responder. You can come into our classroom and teach our children.
Thank you, Mrs. Shaw. And thank you, Leo. Next student delivering a question to the panel is Jackson. And this will be Mr. Brown.
Hi panelists, thank you very much for being here. My name is Jackson Dietz. I'm a senior at Fairport High School, and I'll be attending American University in Washington, D.C. to study international studies next year. My question, Mr. Brown, is for you. How will you support staff and students to make up for the instruction that did not happen during the pandemic?
There we go. That is a great question. Obviously, coming back, I think one of the things that both staff and the kids are going to need are that mental health support. I'm an adult, and trust me, this pandemic has sucked for us just as much. Probably not as much, but there's going to need to be mental health support in place for staff and students because this has been a very trying year. Like I said, my kids at home on a daily basis would be crying, sitting behind the screen, wishing they could go to school and be with their friends. I'm sure some of you have shared frustrations with not being able to attend some sense of normalcy. In terms of catching up, it's just a matter of getting back to complete basics, returning to normal traditional education, putting certain things on hold so that you can get caught back up on the things that will actually help you succeed in life, things like math, science, language, arts, and the basics from that point. I do not think Fairport should be implementing a broad new racial curriculum when the primary goal right now should be helping you guys get caught back up and get you back to where you need to be. I understand that this has been a very trying year for you guys as seniors, but from what I can tell, you guys seem very bright, and I know you're going to do very successful next year. But for everybody coming in, we need you to get back to the basics. It really is just get back to the basics and provide the mental health support that the students need.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. And Mr. Forsgren.
We see on the news all the time these idea of natural disasters, right? And the fires impact California only. Maybe we see the smoke here and there, or floods and tornadoes. Pandemic was not. That's a fascinating thing that it impacted the world, but keep it to this country. It impacted coast to coast this country, students all across the board, so that there's some equal playing field out there as you all are going on to colleges, right, and applying and for the next. And so there's need, like I say, I think it's a misnomer of learning loss. Indeed, the question is about not happening as quickly as it is. So what do we do? There is a lot to do there. And I outlined some of those earlier on, right, that we keep our class sizes. We go now to the smaller end. We've always had a range that we wanted to stay within. Let's go to the smaller end so that we give the teachers the opportunity to work more closely with students and help start making that progress a little more quickly. We are looking at, for sure, at summer schools, enhancing them. We've already increased that budget significantly in order to bring students back over the summer and start addressing that. The mental health, totally agree with. Survey of teachers, despite what some may think, right, out there, is they have put in 900 extra hours this year than they have done. So the mental health of teachers and the students are paramount that we address that. Again, belonging, you make education fun when people feel like they belong, right? So we support the clubs, we support the sports, we support electives, arts, music, etc.
Thank you, Mr. Forsgren. Mr. Quartz?
Ditto with Nate. I agree with every last word of what he has said about this subject. I've had a number of parents approach me about their students in terms of the distance learning. And they've gone from above average students to students that are failing. What do we do about that? How do we get back the year that's been lost? Now, we can talk a lot about it, but quite frankly, I don't see an effective plan. We cannot continue to treat this pandemic like we did a year ago. We have to move forward. We have to have leadership. We need a recovery plan. And we have to get away from this culture of fear. Why are we presenting this as something we should fear? We know a lot more about it. We have vaccines. So if I'm on the board, I'm going to sit down with the other board members and I'm going to involve the community. And we're going to come up with some effective solutions.
Thank you, Mr. Quartz. Mrs. Shell?
So that's a great question. And the question is, how are we going to support and make up for the instruction that the students have not had during this pandemic? I have been advocating and sending emails to the board and to Mr. Provenzano and to my own principal that my son has. I have been advocating for the next 7 weeks to have constant testing, have constant evaluations, have constant communication with our parents so they know where these educational and instruction gaps are. We go into the fall and we don't do these things now, we will lose another 3 or 4 months getting these kids back to where they need to be in the fall. So as a board member, I would urge all teachers and just any staff member, anybody that is involved with the instruction of these children, to find out what they are lacking. How do we do that? Evaluate them. Provide the parents with their gaps so the parents can also work on that from home. Right now, I feel like the board has lost sight of what matters, and that is our students' education, first and foremost. Our current board is more concerned with pushing agendas and other things that have nothing to do with our current education, and we need to start thinking of our students first.
Thank you, Mrs. Shell. And finally, Mrs. White.
Thanks, Jackson. So first and foremost, we got to focus on the mental and physical health of our students and staff. And a lot of this has been ongoing through socio-emotional learning that's already happening in a lot of our classrooms. So continuing to fund and support that professional development for our kids to heal in their classrooms. Our teachers have not missed a beat with this. I mean, this doesn't come up in school ed like, education 205, what to do in a pandemic. It doesn't come up. They are out there up all night fighting for our kids, creating instructional content that they could access. They have fought harder, and I have been on the phone with more colleagues and friends, heartbroken because they can't do more. Learning loss, it's an interesting concept, right? It's something we created. It's a concept we have started to push in the media. We write the standards. There's not a single kid in the world that has not missed part of their education that we set forth. We write these standards and we can adjust them to the growth that our students have met and to where they still have those areas of need. And our teachers know these kids in depth. Just because they're home a few days a week does not mean they don't understand or know their learning and where they are and where we will continue to push them in the fall. Let's focus and celebrate the resilience of our kids. Let's focus on the empathy and care for others that they have developed and demonstrated during this pandemic. They're out there organizing food drives for our community and toiletry drives. Our kids are survivors, and our teachers have done the best they could in a worldwide pandemic.
Thank you, Mrs. White. Thanks, Jackson. Next up is Aubriana and Mr. Forsgren. You will go first.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ariana Archeraj, and I'll be attending the University of Rochester to major in biology and minor in brain cognitive sciences. Okay, so the question is, how will you work with the district to make sure that there is an appropriate level of challenge for all students K through 12 to excel, whether they need extra support or enrichment?
Yeah, and none of you sound like you've had much learning loss actually where you're going and what you're going to study. That's been a pretty amazing set of things. So, love this topic, right? Challenging everybody. Our mantra, our motto, meeting students where they are. So the challenge that they need is always different. This gets into equity and equality, whether people recognize that it applies there or not, that we have IEPs, right? IEPs happen for those with special needs. And that's the ability to help them be successful, but to also challenge them so they don't stay where they are, that they make progress. And many times on the board, we've talked about, wouldn't it be nice if we could do an IEP for every student? It's not practical, doesn't work out so well, but the need to challenge them. So we have those opportunities. Small class sizes support that, right? In terms of a teacher, because I totally support, again, what you said about the teachers getting to know our students. I have been brought nearly to tears in my children's educational career, finding out how well they knew my child. They have done amazing things as they get to know them. And then being able to challenge them in different ways. And so we have plenty of that opportunity in this district, more so than so many others. Again, we have more electives than I think most other districts around here. We have AP, we have honors. We are able to do the K-12 challenging students as we can and should. We have the resources, we do it.
Thank you, Mr. Forsgren. And Mr. Cords.
Congratulations on your admission to U of R. It's a great school. My brother-in-law went there. He's a medical doctor. Educational needs of all students have to be met, regardless of their ability. My son had some learning disabilities. Fairport schools created an IEP. And some of the teachers here took him under their arms and personally tutored him, in addition to myself and my wife. And he graduated with a Regents degree, almost made honors. So Fairport does an excellent job with students that have learning disabilities. But I also believe that we need to promote academic excellence. I know Fairport does a good job at that, but I'm sure there's room for improvement. I'd like to see more involvement with colleges to come here and start identifying good candidate students who can get into schools like the U of R. And so I would say we need to keep it and continue to improve.
Thank you, Mr. Cords. Mrs. Shaw, you're up next.
So the question is, how do we support our IEP students and also students who have AP honors? So I've had the ability to be a paraprofessional at the high school and work with many of these students, either in the classroom as aides or with BOCES students one-on-one. And over the years, I've noticed that Fairport only offers a lot of option 1 classroom, option 2 classroom. And a lot of these options do not always fit the student. So if they don't fall in the option 1 or option 2, we need to find other ways to help them and support them. What we need to do is look and support our teachers, support maybe more aides, looking in the budget to provide more help where kids need it. I've also had the opportunity to have all 3 of my children be in AP and honors classes. And the current board has policies in place where they have not weighted their averages. So you have a child like my son who is taking 4 AP classes, but another child that may be taking a cooking class, but yet his average is a 92. The one child that's taking a Regents and cooking class has a 96 average. we need to start taking look and not penalizing our students who are in AP and honors classes and give them the recognition that they deserve. I also think that we need to also take a look at the students that are in the middle. There is a huge gap of kids that are not in either IEPs or in honors, and those kids need to find ways to support it as well, whether that's getting more aides as well to help teachers and smaller classroom sizes.
Thank you, Mrs. Shell. Mrs. White?
So one of the best parts about education is every kid comes in and they're bringing strengths and they bring areas of need. When we talk about inclusion and equity, we're talking about equitable educational opportunities for every student, regardless of ability. So one aspect of this work is students with special education needs. Through the lens of inclusion, we need to ensure that we have students in our building and in our inclusive learning environment. Make sure we're facilitating co-teaching, professional relationships, support professionals available to partner with our teachers. All students benefit from diverse learning environments, not just those with special education needs. So everyone rises when we create inclusive learning environments. Another aspect is our honors courses and enrichment opportunities. I was here last night at the budget presentation where we discussed the numerous electives options available to students, and it's extremely impressive and exciting. But something that has often been discussed at committee meetings I've been on and with people in the community is access to these opportunities. Many feel like there's barriers that prevent students from being able to enroll in courses that they want, courses that could serve as challenges and opportunities for their learning. So through that lens of equity and inclusion, we need to make sure all students have that chance to push themselves.
Thank you, Mrs. White. Mr. Brown?
So I think it's really important that as a school district, we remember that there's no two students who are the same. Just perfect example, look at the young adults who are here tonight asking us questions. Very different interests, very different passions, all going to different schools. And that goes all the way from seniors all the way down to kindergarten. And we need to empower our teachers to be able to teach our students as individuals in a world where we're so focused on putting people into groups. And it's also important for us to pursue that excellence. I like that word, excellence. AP courses, encouraging those, our best and our brightest. That is how our society drives forward. It's also important to, for students who might struggle, which I was one of them, straight 75 to 85 average, ask my dad. I was not the best, but that was okay. I still made it in life. And kids need to be taught that it's okay to fail. It's okay to fall down as long as you don't stop and as long as you get back up. And more pragmatically, if you are having trouble getting into college, which thankfully none of these guys did, they're smarter than I'll ever be. You could go to a trade school, get a thing as a plumber, an electrician, and you could be laughing your butt off as your friends coming out of a 4-year liberal arts school who are struggling to make ends meet, and you're making $80,000 a year. Those are options, and I think we need to make sure that we teach those kids that they can go that route if they want to.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. And thank you, Ariana. For our 7th question, we have Ava coming back to the podium, and Mr. Cords, you will respond first.
Hi again. Yeah. So what specifically will you do to gather community feedback, communicate what the board is doing to the community, and respond to the public comments and concerns?
Great question, because it's been my observation that this is lacking. I don't believe the school district has done an adequate job communicating to the community, involving the community, or being transparent on a number of issues. There are things that I see, my opinion, that are being, and I hate to use the word, but snuck in. And between the language of academia and what's actually happening, we learn about it later, we the parents. So if I'm on the board, I will increase the communication to the stakeholders, the parents, and the community. It must be improved. Many here feel excluded or not listened to. That perhaps is the worst sin of all. You make your thoughts known and you're just ignored. I would have monthly meetings, newsletters, problem solvings. I'd involve problem-solving process, which perhaps many of you don't know what that is. Focus groups. I'd have a website and, of course, Facebook. And this needs to involve the community at the grassroots level.
Thank you, Mr. Cordes. Mrs. Shaw?
Working. Oh, there we go. Sorry. So as a board member, I think communication with our parents and our community should be at the forefront. There should be full transparency with our communicating with our parents and our community. When I go on to the current site and I see the board minutes, it doesn't actually say anything that they talked about. It just lists what the agenda was. Where is it where it says, this is what we talked about? It is so frustrating for me to be going to these meetings since January, since December, talking to the board members, and all I get is a thank you for your comments. It's patronizing. It makes me feel like you have no idea what is going on in the community, and you have no idea how people feel, and you don't want to listen to it. I have decided that if I am elected, I would like to put a parent page on the website. It's a one-stop shopping. You can list our board minutes with details, the videos of the board meetings. You can have a parent section for complaints and comments to the board directly. It will also list the emails, the forms, everything that the parents have and needed communicated to them. We have been so overwhelmed by emails and constant information from the school district that it is so confusing, especially if you have more than one child in the district. And I think we need to start tailoring our communication to parents so it makes it easier for them to understand.
Mrs. White?
Thanks, Anna. So if you've read anything I've posted online, if you've been to any of my meet and greets, if you know me, you know I always highlight transparency. So in particular, I would like to see a later start time to some of the board meetings. I know 5 p.m. is a very difficult time for people to be able to join. Making sure we're live streaming all of our videos and making sure the meeting minutes are detailed so those who can't watch the video. Another way we can increase transparency is through the strategic initiatives. So we have a strategic initiative that was created in 2018 through Community Voice. I would like to push that further, make those goals more measurable and objective so that we can demonstrate that transparency of what work is being done. What are we doing to meet these objectives our community put forth for us? Under this umbrella, I would like to see an equity comprehensive plan as well as a sustainability comprehensive plan. Our community needs to be able to access the work that's happening easily and readily in our district and be able to trust our work as the board, as well as actively participate in the work.
Thank you, Mrs. White. Mr. Brown?
Sure. So one of the ways, everyone's on social media these days. So here's my shameless plug. I do have a page, Nathaniel Brown, for School Board of Education. But also another thing, we talk about these meetings. There's also some meetings that some parents either don't know about or aren't even allowed to go to. And I think that needs to stop. Another thing, and this is just my personality, I hate vagueness and I hate lack of clarity. And I think right now parents just want clarity. They want succinct answers, straight to the point. And in this area right here, I got to give a shout out to the teachers. They have been rock stars during this pandemic. Whenever I have a question that isn't answered, I can go to them and they always come right back. And I think the board needs to adopt that exact same approach. Everything these days in education, and I don't know why this is buzzwords: diversity, equity, inclusion, all words that sound great, but I have yet to hear anybody in clear, succinct language explain exactly how that is achieved and what that actually does. And I think as a school board, we need to get back to just being straightforward with what the programs are, straightforward with what our meetings are about, full minutes, no meetings where parents can't come to. And if you know me personally, you can come up to me on any issue. You can tell me I am a complete moron and why you think that, and I will have a respectable conversation with you. And I think we need that ability to agree to disagree and to have these conversations openly and to get back to parents when they have their questions.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. And Mr. Forsgren.
Thank you. I will make myself vulnerable in this one. In 9 years, this is still frustrating, right? Here's all the things we have. We have Facebook pages, every school for the district, Instagram pages, Twitter, web pages, emails, narrow and broad, commentator mailed to every resident at least 2 times a year. YouTube and Facebook Live, we have meetings that people make comments to and then do not attend the rest of the meetings, see what's going on. We've been accused of having secret meetings, but we don't have to keep them secret. Nobody attends them. This is frustrating. I am open to suggestions. I will not doubt that. There have been some made and questions, and they were brought up already tonight, more detailed minutes. The meetings are recorded so you can see what was discussed if they're not in the minutes, and I believe that is an area of improvement. Request to live stream and or tape everything. I believe for the most part that is. The workshops should be added to that. We could add community forums. We have done those in the past, but again, nobody attended. Heart to heart, what is it that we can do differently? Because we have the workshops, we have the board meetings, we have these things advertised because it's law, and happy to do it. I have wanted that from the beginning, and it remains a frustration of all those things I've listed. What is not working, and what do we need to do differently? This is a day of easy communication, and we cannot yet communicate somehow with 10 different ways that we try.
Thank you, Mr. Forsgren. And thank you, Ava. We have 2 remaining questions, and we're getting a little late into the night. I'd just like to remind everybody that we do need to keep our masks on inside the room. So if you don't have yours on, please put it back on. Thank you. And we have Nick to ask the 8th question, and Mrs. Shell, you will be responding first.
Okay. What is your stance on equity, and what is the role that public education should play in promoting equity?
Thank you for your question. So, equity is about ensuring that everyone receives what they need to be successful, even if that varies across racial or socioeconomic lines. So if we allow students the freedom and a platform to address inequities, to raise concerns without the threat of consequences or being disrespectful, we're able to move forward towards more equitable discipline and instruction. Equity is all about fair outcomes for every student, but as a board member, I can't know what the students and their families need unless I listen to them first. So isn't there some irony in the fact that schools are supposed to serve students and families, yet students and parents get the least input in making these decisions? So as a board member, I would look to hire an equity and diversity director. I would review curriculum and look at the curriculum to ensure that all students see themselves reflected into it. Equity has been a buzzword, as Mr. Brown has said. And if we are fully going to make sure that all our students get what they need, then we need the current board and board members that will be elected to start looking at the changes that need to be made for every student, not just one.
Mrs. White?
Thank you. So first I have to say thank you to Kelly Weishar, who's our Equity and Diversity Director, as well as the members of the Equity and Diversity and Access Committee. Even with the pandemic, we swept to online so that we could continue to look at different lenses, our budget, our curriculum, what could we do to be supporting all learners. So thank you to everybody who served on there. So first, what is equity? Equity is ensuring every student has the support they need to be successful. This differs from equality, which is the guarantee that every student will get the same thing. Equity means we're going to work on our system to ensure the individual has what they need. How do we do this equity work? It's a huge undertaking. It means looking at our educational system through various lenses to see what inequities are present. These lenses allow us to shine a light through our system and see what we're doing well, where are our kids' needs being met, but also where they aren't. Each lens provides historical and current information about possible inequities evident in education systems, to which then we can compare the education here in Fairport and see if that's what's happening here as well. We look through lenses to find inequities towards gender, race, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, ability, nationality, etc. This work is recursive and ongoing because our district is always changing. The lens of equity is applied to all we do to serve families, students in our community, to make sure what we're doing is just and equitable.
Thank you, Mrs. White. Mr. Brown?
All right. So this is an interesting topic. Obviously, we want every student, like I said at the very beginning, no matter what you are, I'll just say that you get what you need to succeed, the resources you need, and the teachers, and just everything you need to be able to apply yourself and to succeed. The problem is that's not equity. That's just doing the right thing. Equity, as most people define it, is a matter of outcome. When you look at in the world, when you look at how equity in education is being applied, there are some glaring problems. If you look in Virginia, they are doing away with AP courses because the student pool is not equitable. The example I gave earlier in New York, this is happening in our own state. They are shutting down advanced testing and AP courses because there are too many Asians. 55% of the class makeup is Asian, and that is not equitable. And that is a real thing. I read it, and it's true. That is not how the world works. Bill Gates is a billionaire. I'm not. That's inequitable. That's okay. We're so focused on these things that, frankly, if you read about it, they go all the way back to critical race theory. Our goal should just be making sure that every student is welcomed, cared for, and given every opportunity to succeed. And if they don't, pick them up. But the results are up to them. And that is what equity is. It's results.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Forsgren?
Yeah, parents, I think we have a heart to heart on this one, right? If I have 5 children, 2 still at home, a 10th grader and an 8th grader, 3 graduated, and I think I've said, if you've been to my page, my wife calls them 5 opposites, and that makes sense. Doesn't make sense, perhaps, but it makes sense, right? The third one would come home from school, and he needed 30 minutes. Can you believe it or not, we had a teenager that wanted to talk to his mother 30 minutes every day after school. The others would come home after school and, hi, Mom, up to the room. Hi, Mom, down to the video game. Hi, Mom, doing homework, whatever it was. But not this one, right? He needed an infusion of time to decompress, to, I don't know, flush, whatever it was. And we found that with every single one of our children, that our practice of equity with our children was they each needed something different. They took different inputs. Their outcome is up to them and totally up to them. And in public schools where we tax people, it's important that we practice that we get the resources so that on the other side, when they come out, they are contributing citizens, positively contributing citizens, because we gave the inputs that were needed for each of them individually. Our teachers are amazing at this, right? That they get to know the students and are able to help us identify. We have an IEP process that does that also so very well. It's challenging, but it's the right work to do.
Thank you, Mr. Forsgren. And wrapping this question up, we have Mr. Cords.
This is perhaps one of the most difficult subjects to discuss because, quite frankly, if we can't agree on a definition, then we can't discuss it. That's something my professors at school said. If you can't agree on the definition of equity, how can you have a legitimate discussion? So there's probably 100 different definitions of equity in here. And some are legitimate and some I suspect. I believe in equality, and I also believe that students that need extra help, extra resources, that they get it. That's on both ends of the spectrum. And I think the school has done a good job of that, but I'm very concerned about what is being taught. And goes back to some of the critical race theory, because equity generally takes from one group it can and gives to another. Rob Peter to pay Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cords. Thank you, Nick, again. And with our final question for the evening, we have Aubriana again. And Mrs. White will be responding first.
Hello again. Okay, so please give an example of when you were able to work with people and ideas contrary to your beliefs.
Thanks, Adriana. So I serve on various education committees, and one of the big ones right now is the Regional Equity Network. And all of our superintendents and a lot of our administrators agreed to work on this committee this year to deepen their understandings of what equity and inclusion are. And there's some really tough conversations that happen when we talk about this topic. And there's people who bring in different levels of background knowledge. But the role of the steering committee is in supporting them in working through a lot of these tough conversations. So I'm very proud to be able to serve our county in that measure. But in terms of other contrary beliefs, I mean, we have 2 toddlers, so that's pretty much a daily conversation as people contrary. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. White. And Mr. Brown?
Frankly, I do it just about every day at my job. I work at a company with a lot of diverse opinions, a lot of diverse backgrounds, and every day we come in and we pull those ideas together and we figure out how to best come up with the best solution to problems. If you can't have conversations with people you disagree with, if you can't get along with people you disagree with, I don't even know what's the point. There's opinions all over the world. We have our own thoughts, we have our own ideas, and you have to be able to collaborate and work together. This is something that I know Fairport has been teaching. It was taught when I was a kid here. You saw it when you were here. You had teachers who had different strategies on how to teach the kids. They had conflicting ideas. And what did they do? They came together, they said, this works, this doesn't, and they came up with a plan. And who benefited? Us, the kids. And that is what we have to do, to be able to work together, because everybody has ideas that are good. We may not agree on all of them, but we have the same goals. And so we have to pool our minds and come up with what works, just like I do at my job every day, so that, or at my job is to make sure the customers are benefited. The job on the school board is to pool these ideas and make sure that the students are benefited, and that's what I would do.
Thank you, Mr. Brown and Mr. Forsman.
Yeah, we say it humorously parenting, but it's really true, right? 7 years ago, I quit my job, very good paying job, to test the capitalist system and start my own business with a partner. That is challenging. Talk to any accountant who does small business accounting. They will tell you generally it ends friendships. And 7 years into this, thankfully I have that, but we had our down and out and had to learn, communicate. I actually did some role playing at home with my sons, being my partner, and I didn't kill my son, so my partner still lives. It was really challenging. It's been an amazing experience that at times I would not want to repeat and have loved, if that makes sense. It's the challenges that help us grow. And so I recognize that, and it's been very successful, thankfully. The ulcers are gone. Schoolwork, how can it not be near the top of my list as well, right? The diversity indeed brings that out where we have to deal with it, to listen in, and to try to find it. I have always said, and I wish not to offend, but I have to check myself, right? That those on either side of any issue point out those problems that need to be resolved, but not necessarily the solutions that we should adopt. And so in a school, in a public school especially, it's bringing what you've heard into the middle, meaning these people will be upset, but we're getting to the right solution. And that has been the work of the school board.
Thank you, Mr. Forsman. Mr. Courts?
Over the course of my career, I have lived and worked and trained people, and I think I'm up to 42 countries now. So if anybody's worked with a more diverse set of circumstances, it's me. And so all of those present interesting challenges, culturally, language, you name it, and more so politics. I've worked extensively in China. And there's always diverse opinions and sometimes legal challenges to the problems at hand. The right way to go about things is taught by Dr. Ed Deming, who is the father of quality, who tutored me, is the problem-solving process. If anybody knows what a Six Sigma black belt is, congratulations, but you're talking to one here. So define the problem, use the problem-solving process, get the emotion and the politics out of the situation, and come up with sustainable solutions, and then implement them and check to see that they're successful. That's what I do.
Thank you, Mr. Quartz. And to wrap up our final question, Mrs. Shell.
So give you an example of when you were able to work with people and ideas contrary to your beliefs. This is a perfect question for me. Because on a daily basis over the last 3 months, I have been attacked on social media because I actually take a stand and don't dance around a question. I have been attacked by teachers that work in this school. I have been attacked by current sitting board members. I have been attacked by the community. I have been attacked on a daily basis to the point where I actually reconsidered whether or not I was going to run for school board. Now, I decided that I will not stop. I will not back down. I will be here over and over and over again. And if that's whether I am on this board fighting for our students in this community, or if I do not get elected, I will be at these schools and I will be at these meetings. And if you think that it is appropriate for having current teachers, current board members attack you for your ideas and beliefs, then you need to vote for a change.
Thank you, Mrs. Shell. And thank you again, Aubriana. So that concludes our question and answer portion. Again, we will give each candidate another 90 seconds to conclude their thoughts for the evening. We will start with Mr. Brown and work our way around the table, ending with Mrs. White. So Mr. Brown, you have the floor.
So this is cool. I didn't even know I was going to get this. This is bonus time. I guess I'll just explain myself a little bit more. I was born and raised in Fairport, lived in the same house from crawling all the way until I graduated, right in the middle of the village. My father was a teacher here. He directed the orchestra for 35 years. My mother, she also taught in this district, both in music. I played in the orchestra here. I know Fairport like the back of my hand. I walked, I would save my lunch money so I could walk from my house in the village across the lift bridge and rent video games for $5 to get it for a week. That was what I did with my time back then. This community was great to me. This school was great to me. And I wanted to raise my family here. And I'm running for school board because I want to give back to what this community gave to me and to fight for what this community gave to me. And in a silly little way, restore some sanity to a mad, 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 mad world. It's been a very tough year. Our students and our teachers have been rock stars. But the climate around us is divisive and controversial. And I think when I was a kid, we didn't think about these things. We just knew who our friends were. We knew who our favorite teachers were. Some of my favorite teachers are still here. Mr. Hargrave, anybody know him? I love that guy. Yeah, the best. We listened to Bob Marley during study hall. But I'm out of time. But yeah, I'm running because I was born and raised here, and I love it here, and I want to just keep Fairport an amazing place.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Forsgren.
It is indeed amazing. Ava, Nick, Sean, Jackson, or Leo, Jackson, and Brianna, thank you for your time tonight. Mr. and Mrs. Driscoll for moderating. Appreciate all you coming out, loving having the interest in it. I have a great affinity for democracy and a trust in the people. And hoping that indeed you will find me to be a great solution to continue. Like I say, I've been on the board for 9 years and the work is awesome. It really is. It is a great community. The students are amazing. They impress me. I love being a parent. I have 5 kids. I do wish I could have more, but there's other works at place. They do teach me so much, and I see great reason to be hopeful for the future. And that is because of all the work that is done so much in the schools. There's so much in the schools. We are a people organization. Our budget reflects that. We invest in people so that they teach people, which are our students and our children. And there is much work to be done. As I've said, we are a great district. The numbers support it, the outcomes support it. And we recognize, though, that you can never be satisfied. You can't sit on your laurels. It's time to move forward and move onward. I am dedicated to that work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Forsgren. Mr. Queens.
I've lived here, well, in the area all my life, but I've also traveled the world. And I know what to expect, but do you? There's some real challenges coming out there, both technologically and unfortunately militarily. And it's going to affect our kids. So I think that every decision we make from here on out, we have to take those things into consideration. Artificial intelligence is looming large. It's not about automated factories. It's going to replace a good many of our jobs, but no one's planning for it. No one's looking ahead. I see what's happening in China. Apple has almost a total robotics assembly plant. So these things need to be planned for. Somebody that's versed in technology and a worldview is helpful to our community. The politics has to go. Believe it or not, in the Fairport School District, there is a policy that talks about politics in the school district. Depending on how you interpret it, one could easily surmise that it should be left out at all costs.
Thank you, Mr. Cords. Next up, we have Mrs. Shell.
So I want to thank everybody first and foremost, especially the students and everybody that's come. I want to let you know that I am running for school board because not only am I a parent in this district, but I have been involved in every facet of this district, whether it was a lunch lady working and serving lunches, whether it was a secretary in the counselor's room, a paraprofessional, and I've also been involved in the PTA since my son has been in kindergarten, being a president and a vice president. I am in the community ingrained. I have been on the board for football Packers. I run the concession stand at Fairport Little League. I have been at every event. I have had fundraisers for students with cancer. I have made my life about Fairport. I find it interesting that we did not talk about athletics and how that is a main topic that should be addressed and how our school board is not supporting our athletic program. They did not pay our spring coaches. Once there was a pushback, they decided to pay them 50%. It is clear that this school board is only worried about equity and diversity. They are not worried about our support staff and paying our school bus drivers what they should be paid. They are not worried about our athletic coaches and giving them support. And they are 100% not supporting our students. We do not need more teachers and PhDs on this board. We need people who have opinions, stances, and are ready to make change for our students.
Thank you,
Please
Mrs.
vote for me.
And to finish, Mrs. White.
Well, since Dr. Miller-Smith stepped down, I would be the only one, so it would be cool. So I have dedicated my life to the field of education and in serving children in our communities. I love public education. I have said it before. I think it is one of the most profound things we do as Americans. We come together and we fund 13 years of education for every child. We don't always meet the mark, but the fact that we've made this promise gives us such an opportunity to make meaningful change in the lives of our students, our families, and our communities. Through my degrees and my work in the field, I have a deep and solid understanding of educational research and best practices. I'm active in the field, both in work in our district's committees, as well as in area schools through my work in Geneseo. I know what the role of a Board of Education member is and what it is not. School board members are charged with 3 tasks: ensuring the education of our community's children, hiring and supervision of the superintendent, and the budget. I have prior board service experience, meaning I have a deep understanding of the laws, regulations, and policies of this work, and I can bring that expertise to this community. I'm asking for your vote on May 18th. How I do anything is how I do everything. I have lived my life with integrity, focused on service. I have dedicated my life to children and public education, and I will bring that same level of integrity, service, and dedication to our board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. White. This concludes our evening. I would just ask that we give our students one more round of applause for attending tonight. I hope everyone here in attendance and those at home found this very informative and helped you get a better understanding of the candidates running for our Board of Education. And just ask one more round of applause for our panel of candidates. At this time, you can exit through either doors in the rear of the auditorium. Thank you.